Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today the topic is tools, equipment, supplies, beads that I commonly use in my beading projects. So this may look different to other beaders and other jewelry makers, especially those who string beads or who do wire wrapping, because I mostly do weaving techniques. So this may be different, okay, to other creators. And before we do a project together, like me posting a tutorial for you, I think it may be best if I tell you what I actually use, so that you don't start to watch a tutorial and you want to bead along with me and then you notice, oh, I don't have that tool, and oh, somehow my needles don't fit through my beads or something like this, okay? So we will start with talking about all of these things that I use. I've also put an Amazon link down there. I will link every item that I bought via Amazon down below, but you can also check out my Amazon storefront. I do earn a commission if you buy via these links, but many of these things I still use them today and they're absolutely fine for beginners. And yeah, I can recommend them. I mean, I've used them for 1.5 years now and I don't see any problems with them. Of course, if you have a bead supplier where you can buy all the tools and the beads that you need, of course you can go there and shop there. So if you have no clue where to go and where to buy stuff, you can check out my Amazon links. I think it's best if we start out with tools. This is a set that I bought, so I can really recommend it because you have all the necessary tools which I use on a regular basis in there. We've got some wire cutters. If you only do brick stitch or you bead along findings, you probably won't need these. But for many of my projects I actually use wire, and yeah, I use these. I'm pretty happy with these, so can recommend. Then some other pliers are round nose pliers. You also use these for wire wrapping to shape little loops out of wire. Also a pair of flat nose pliers. I use these to open jump rings, for example. And I'm not quite sure how you call these. They're basically also flat nose pliers, but they have like a softer cushion. And I use these if I want to flatten a loop, for example, and you want to avoid getting dents or nicks in there. And yeah, all 4 of these tools are in the set, so I like them. They're beginner tools, so nothing professional, and I think they're good enough and they work pretty well. Of course we will need some scissors. I use these. They are actually skin scissors. I bought them in a drugstore and they work pretty nicely. They are slightly bent, and I think that's quite handy if you want to avoid cutting into your jewelry piece. Then let me check my list because I really don't want to forget anything. Then another handy tool that I use is this one. It's a thread zap from Beadsmith. And I bought this relatively late because it was recommended to me. I think most people use it to cut thread. I don't, I use my scissors, but it's super handy to burn away thread that sticks out somewhere. In case you haven't cut close enough, I use these to burn away the ends. Yeah, and it's quite handy. So what you do, it's got a button and you press it and then the tip gets hot. You can actually see it. You know, it turns red because it's hot. So please be careful with this. I guess it hurts if you touch the tip. I've never tried it, but yeah, it's super handy. You can close it just to be sure, and I really like this. I don't use it all the time. I only use it, yeah, when I fail at cutting my thread, but it's a really nice tool, because when the thread end is too short, it's super hard to cut away another millimeter that's bothering you. So this is the right tool for this. A beading mat. So this is actually made of plastic, and it's super soft, super flexible. It's enough for me. There are also beading mats if in case you want to string beads for necklaces or bracelets. I don't do this, I only use this simple mat. And the handy thing about these mats is that there are no fibers sticking out. So if you take up beads and you get stuck with your needle in such fibers, it could happen that you fling your beads all over the place. So we really want to avoid this. I started out with a mat out of felt, I think. Felt? I hope it's the right word. And yeah, it didn't go so well. So please buy a proper beading mat. It will make your life so much easier. And then you don't have to go around and search for all the beads. I've also linked these. The product is shown with 2 beading mats in 2 different colors. There are 2 beading mats in there, but it may happen that you don't get the colors that are actually shown. So if that bothers you, maybe buy different mats, but I'm very happy with the quality and the feel of them, so I don't really care about the color. So this is actually the latest one I got. So it's a pretty neutral light yellow. I think it's quite nice to work on. Needles. So a question I often get is, how come that my needles don't fit through my beads? And the problem is probably that you use sewing needles and you don't use beading needles. So I've got some sewing needles here. We don't want to use these. As you can see, the end with the eye is much wider than the beginning of the needle. And so your bead will fit on the beginning of the needle, on one end, but it won't go over the end with the eye. And the thing with beading needles is that they have pretty much the same width along the whole needle. See? Pretty uniform. You won't have the problem with these needles. I use size 10 and 12 from Pony Black. I haven't seen these on Amazon, but you can also buy needles from Beadsmith, for example. And I've put a whole set of needles into my links if you want to try different ones. So there are needles with huge eyes along the whole length of the needle. I don't use those. I only use the needles with an eye at the end of the needle. And there are also different lengths you can buy. So maybe try out what suits your needs best and what you can work with best. Okay, so please don't use sewing needles. It will be a problem at some point. Especially with 15 O's. I mean, probably already with 11 O's, but definitely with 15 O's. Okay, then now beading thread. I only use nylon beading thread. Some people absolutely hate nylon thread because it knots easily. and it also frays easily. So you can buy conditioned nylon thread, which would be this one, for example. This is from Miyuki, and it should be size B, which is 0.2 millimeters in diameter. They come in many different colors. They have a metallic shine to them. And I mainly use these for bracelets. You know my herringbone bracelets. There you can actually see quite a lot of thread. And I like to match the thread color to my beads. And for earrings, the sun is coming out. Okay, guess now you can see me again. So this is nylon thread. They come in many different colors also. It's size O, which is 0.15 millimeters in diameter, and they are not conditioned. So depending on how practiced you are with nylon thread, it could be that you want to condition your thread, because if it's not conditioned, it ties knots even more easily and it also frays more easily. So what I use to condition my thread if I need to is beeswax. There are also other products you can use. I've never really tried any other products. I'm quite happy with this one if I have to use it. So that's good for me, but it's quite crumbly. Now we will continue with metal supplies, so jump rings, for example. I think the most common size for jump rings is 5 or 6 millimeters. You can get them in different colors, especially in beginner packs, if you don't know what colors you want to use for your pieces. I use pretty small jump rings. They're about 3 millimeters, but I also have 5 millimeter ones. So those are the two that I use, mostly in brass, but I also have them in sterling silver and also gold filled. Then what I also can recommend are wire guards. Many people form loops out of thread and beads, and then they put a jump ring on there, and then their clasp. That's fine. You can totally do this. But for me it's not safe enough, because especially for bracelets or very heavy fringe earrings, it may happen that the more you wear it and use it, you can actually rub through or cut through the thread with the jump rings. So what I use are wire guards. They are tiny U-shaped pipes, basically, where you can put your thread through, and the jump ring that you put in there will then rub along the inner side of the wire guard. So there's no stress on the thread, and there's much less wear and tear on the thread. So little risk for anything to break. Yeah. So I use wire guards. You can also get them again in different colors, in different materials. I also have them for gold, silver and brass. And you can also get them in different sizes. Anything you need to actually wear your jewelry, like lobster clasps, earring hooks. You may want to buy those little stoppers you can put on your earring hooks so that your earrings don't fall out, because you don't always notice it, especially when you wear scarves and you put them on and off. You could wear one of your earrings, and if it was an expensive one or you had it for a long time, that's not something you want to happen. So maybe invest in some of these stoppers for earring hooks. And yeah, Then I think we can move on to beads. Most beaders I see posting their projects in jewelry use seed beads, so round beads. I think most of them use some kind of Japanese brand like Miyuki or Toho. Depending on the brand, the bead will look different in its shape. 11-0 seed bead from Miyuki will look different than an 11-0 from Toho and many other brands that are out there. So usually for one bead type, I think most beaders stick to one type. So if they use 11-0 seed beads, they probably always use Miyuki, for example, in combination with other bead types from other brands. That's what I do. If you have seen some of my jewelry pieces, you may have noticed that I use cylindric beads. So those are not seed beads. So those are not round seed beads, but cylindric ones. Size 11-0. So these are the typical beads that I use. There you can see them. So these are cylindric, they are not round. These are the main beads that I use. In combination with Miyuki rounds 15-0, so super tiny seed beads. So I have some staple colors like silver and gold, of course. And then I use many matte colors like white and black, and also bead mixes. For my Miyuki Delica beads, I mainly use transparent lustered. That's because I work a lot with ombre designs and not motifs. So if you want to bead motifs, I would advise you to use opaque or matte colors because they shine much less and it's easier for people to notice or recognize the motif that you wanted to bead. If you use lustered beads, they reflect a lot of light and it's much harder to notice a motif. I think you should use those for easy patterns or ombre designs. And another color type I use are metallic ones and also matte metallic ones. But the matte metallic ones are pretty expensive, so maybe do not start out with these. I think they are super pretty, but they can get quite pricey per gram of beads. Think about it, whether you want to buy these for beginner projects. Okay, then what I also often use are Czech beads, the fire polished ones in the size 3mm. I have them in many different color combinations. And then I also use some Czech pressed beads. Those are the round ones. I have them either in transparent or opaque. And also some metallic ones. And another bead type that I often use are brass beads. Many people ask me about the golden beads that I use in many of my earrings. They're actually not golden, they're brass colored. So they will get a little darker with time, but not much. And I use cube and round ones in the sizes 2 and 3mm. Other beads that I use are 3mm bicone beads, like these. I have them either in transparent colors or also AB lustered, the super shiny ones. And I also use faceted crystal beads. These that I show you, they are not round, they are Well, I call them pinecone shaped. I'm not sure, that's probably not the right term, but they're not completely round. And then what I also use are 4mm Czech beads. I mainly use pressed round ones, also in transparent and opaque, but I also have a few fire polished ones, like these. And then some beads that are probably not that common are demi-rounds, so they're only half the size of the usual bead. If you buy 11/0 demi-rounds or spacer beads, they're called spacer beads for Miyuki and demi-rounds for Toho, they are only half as high as the usual seed bead. So I use these in the sizes 11 and 8/0. And what I forgot to mention is what I also advise you to get is a tiny funnel. So either you want to have some I don't know, bead dishes, which you can easily use to get your beads back into the glass jars or plastic jars where you keep them, or you want to use a tiny funnel to make things easier for you. This is the one I use. These are some smaller bolts and things that I use for, well, beads I find somewhere on the floor, or, you know, project that never made it. I think it's quite handy to have some bolts there on your desk where you put things into. So of course you don't have to buy all these beads I just mentioned. If you want to bead along with me by using one of my tutorials to follow along, I would recommend you to get Miyuki Delica 11/0 beads. Of course you can make all these projects also with seed beads, but you need to consider that the shape is different and therefore the bead count may change. So just because I made something with Miyuki Delica beads doesn't mean that it will work out the same way with seed beads. Then also what I often use are the Miyuki rounds 15/0 Czech beads, fire polished and 3mm, and those brass beads I mentioned. I use those often, but I mean, you don't have to buy these. As I said before, I will not tell you the exact shops or sellers I buy from, but especially bead supplies I get from Etsy sellers. So just check the search and buy from a shop with good reviews. And yeah, and all these other beads, I mean, it's nice to have, but not everyone needs this kind of a collection, because it can get quite expensive. So yeah, start out with a few common ones and you can already make a lot of different projects with these. Again, you can find quite a number of links down below to my social media, to my Etsy shop, to some products I just mentioned, the tools, the thread zap, beading mats, if you need anything. You can find it down below, also the link to my complete storefront. There are more things linked in there, like packaging material or all the tech stuff I use, in case you're interested in this. And that's it for today. I hope you found it useful. By the way, if I forgot anything, something important, don't know what it could be, but I guess there's something. Or maybe you have something you use all the time that I didn't mention. I would love to hear what it is. Some kind of tool or some super pretty beads that you use all the time. Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear from you. And for now, I'm off. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you later. Bye. Have a good one.